In this segment of the Women in Publishing Summit, first of all, I'm Alexa Bigworth, your host of this amazing summit of incredible women who are just bringing their everything to this. And today we're going to dig into an important topic. We're talking about marketing, which is obviously important for any author, but sometimes when you're writing a book that touches on a really sensitive subject, or you may be worried about how people perceive or respond to the book, there may be some different things that you need to do with marketing that particular book. So we are talking with Rachel Thompson, who is a marketing expert. By the way, this is what she does professionally. She is a book marketer. She runs Bad Redhead Media. But she's also an author of a very, very sensitive topic book. She's the author of the award-winning best-selling Broken Places, one of Indie Reader's best of 2015 top books, and the 2015 honorable mention winner in both Los Angeles and the San Francisco Book Festivals, and the best-selling multi-award winning Broken Pieces, as well as 2 additional humor books. She owns Bad Redhead Media and runs social media and book marketing campaigns for authors. Her articles appear regularly in the Huffington Post, Feminine Collective, Indie Reader, Medium, On Mogul, Transformation is Real, Blue Ink Review, Book Machine, and several other publications, which you'll want to check out because those are great places for you to try and get your books and writing and all of that stuff as well. She's also a huge advocate for victims of sexual assault. And that is the topic behind Broken Places and Broken Pieces. So thank you so much for being with us today again.
Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, last time we talked, you dove right into like general marketing tips and things that would be great for anybody. But this time, we really, especially with the theme of our conference this year, using our words to change the world. I mean, talk about a topic that has been highly, highly in the news with all the Me Too stuff. I'm sure that has benefited you, not you, but benefited the ability to market the book because it's, again, in the news. I don't know if you've been able to capture that, but I'm going to let you talk. You're the expert here. What's it been like to market a book on a subject that's very, very, very sensitive?
Well, I'm one of many, many voices out there, of course. I published Broken Pieces back in 2013, and then Broken Places came out in 2015. Yeah, 2015, and I've been working on Broken People now. My business kind of blew up, so it sort of had to blew up in a good way. So it sort of had to go on the back burner, but that's the third part of the trilogy. So, it's been very gratifying to hear people be much more open about their stories, people who have never talked about their stories of being abused, whether it's as children or in the workplace or, I think there are so many people who have struggled in their work life in terms of sexual harassment who are coming out with their Me Too stories. And so I think it's been gratifying to see the power exchanges and how that needs to be talked about and changed, and especially not just Hollywood. I mean, this has happened in my own work life, and I think many people have experienced that as well. Men, women, LGBTQ, it happens across the board. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. I mean, it just is so prevalent. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's been gratifying to see people feel emboldened to talk about it. So I don't feel like that's something that I was able to capitalize on. I just feel like that it's great that we all are encouraged by one another's stories and able to, collectively have more of a voice together.
Right.
And I think the main reason I wrote my book really was so that if anybody else felt like what they experienced, because as a child, what happened to me, I had no idea growing up that when I felt things like panic attacks or, terrifying feelings or flashbacks, that all those had a name. I really had no idea. And so what I wanted people to understand is that they weren't alone in feeling those things. And so that really was the reason I wrote my book. And I think that a lot of people feel so alone in what they're going through. And that was the main reason I wrote my book. So to be able to add to that collective voice is just really helpful for everybody.
Absolutely. And I do want to clarify that I didn't mean like
Oh, no,
capitalize, like
no. I knew what you meant.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but it is interesting though how when things come up in the news, it does, I mean, as a marketing tactic, it does really, really help to be able to utilize those things to get your book in front of a larger audience as well. So, and with books like this, the more people who read it, obviously, the more people you can help and we can help. What do you think has been the most challenging part for you? Now, it was your first book. Now, did you write your humor books first, or?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I wrote A Walk in the Snark and The Man Code Exposed in 2011 and 12. And they're not even available for sale anymore. I mean, the reason they're still on Amazon is because there's paperback print copies available that I published through Book Trope, and then they closed. And so those books, for me, I have not made them available as a self-published author, or right after Book Trope, it was a hybrid publisher closed. I was picked up by an agent and a small traditional publisher, and we made the choice not to publish those books. So they're still out there, and I may at some point, I'm looking at some of the essays, I may pull them and, rework them in some ways. But, that was like, gosh, I wrote those over 10 years ago. The essays in the books, and so much has changed. I'm divorced now, and humor. I'm still very snarky in some ways, or sarcastic about some things. And I think that the books were written in a satirical manner to make fun in a light, poking way at some of the silly stuff that couples do. But so much has changed. I'm divorced, and I talk a lot about at the time the man I was married to, and so it just didn't really apply anymore. Yeah.
So the book did not lead to the divorce then.
Oh my gosh. No. He was a really good sport about a lot of what was in those books, at least at the time. But, and it was just, my kids were very, very small, and now they're 19 and 13. So, a lot of that stuff just doesn't really apply. But I decided really to rebrand, because I felt a lot of what I was talking about in those books was almost maybe a cover-up for the pain I was feeling as a survivor, and I wasn't ready to talk about that yet. And so I felt like I wasn't ever making fun of survivors in any way ever, because I was so sensitive to that. Because I grew up in a family that swept it all under the rug. If we didn't talk about it, it didn't happen. And so I was super, and still am very, as an advocate and activist, really very conscious of never minimizing or dismissing someone's pain.
Right.
And so I didn't ever want to come across that way, and I don't feel that I ever did with the humor books, because I never even addressed anything having to do with sexual abuse or any kind of situations like that. But I just wanted to make sure that by pulling those books off, there would be no way that anybody could ever look at them and say, but you said this in this book, and now you're talking about this in that book. And so I just thought, this is not my focus. My focus is now on being a survivor and talking about my story, and really just focusing on how to connect with other survivors. And that's where the marketing aspect comes into it. And so that's really where I pulled those off, and then changed my blog. Even the domain went from, I think it was something totally different that had nothing to do with my name even. When I started out, I really just started a blog to share pics of my kids with my mom. I mean,
that was me too.
2007, 12. So 12 years later, I know a little bit more. But I did have a marketing and sales background. And so once I realized, wow, people are reading my stuff, I kind of need to get on the ball here. And, Facebook, I don't want to talk to my high school friends. I didn't like them then. I don't want to talk to them now. But then I realized I could use it for marketing purposes. So, that really changed.
So what would you say that some of the, because you take on all kinds of clients marketing all kinds of books, fiction, nonfiction, all kinds of stuff. So what would you say are some of the different approaches that you take when it comes to marketing a book like Broken Places, Broken Pieces, as opposed to just general not sensitive books?
Well, the basic premise for any author and their books is that we, for the most part, 99% of the time, we market the author, not the book. So what you really want to look at is, what are you, the author, passionate about? And most likely you're pretty much talking, whether it's online and tweets or Facebook or Instagram or in your blog, you're pretty much drawn naturally to what you're passionate about already. And so I think a lot of times people, authors, especially new writers, will say, well, I don't want to market. I don't have time to market. I don't have time to blog. I just want to write. And so that's great. But if you want to, you and I laugh about this a lot. If you want to sell books and you want people to read your books, then you have to have a presence, and you have to connect with readers in some way. And so you may as well do it authentically, instead of, make a list of all the things. I have a planner. I still write things down. Make a list of all these personas and avatars and all these things that aren't going to feel natural to you. Talk about what you're passionate about, and that's what's going to come across naturally. So if your book is about, we tend to write about what we're most interested in, regardless of whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Right. That's so true.
That's another thing I hear from people a lot. And well, that works for nonfiction, but what about fiction? Most people write about something they are passionately interested in.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's like 3rd century, I don't know, Chinese fighting weapons or something, at some point they've done a deep dive into that research and can be the expert at parties. Right. And so, and if they've written a book about it, they clearly have some interest in that, or they would not have spent the last 3 years researching it. So that's what's really going to be your purpose and your drive and your passion. And so it's easy then to talk about all that kind of stuff. And that naturally will make it much easier for you to brand yourself, which is what we refer to as author branding. And then you're able to talk about your book, pull a couple quotes from your book, talk about why you ended up writing this. Although I do caution people, don't write a whole entire, tome about writing, because snore. So, but for me, I mean, to go back to marketing a book about a difficult topic, which is what you asked me. I don't want to make this all about me. So many people are very, very nervous about sharing their stories. So you have to get over that hump. And the thing that I tell people that helped me the most was a quote from Lori Moore, who is an author, a very famous author and teacher. And she said, write something you'd never show your mother or father.
That's a good idea.
And then most of her students would say, I could never do that. And she said, well, then, you can't write. We are adults and we need to write like adults. And that's what I always say to people that I'm coaching on these types of things. And so, nobody's going to see it. Just write it. Right. And write that, bad first draft. I'm not going to curse. And, write 20 horrible first drafts. And at some point you're going to find those jewels. And that at that point, then you can start connecting with people with, whatever issue it is or trauma that you've experienced. Connect those, what we call keywords. So look up sexual abuse or trauma or accidents or whatever it is that you've experienced. There's those common bonds, and that's authentically you, to go back to what you were saying.
I think it's also really important to identify your message early on and really stick and what I mean by this is that I have an author who's written a book, and it's a beautiful book. It's actually a trilogy, and they're they're essentially about birth trauma. But she's got some stories in there about the loss of a pregnancy and the loss of and a rape and some things like this. And when she was trying to market herself and market her book, she was very confused as to which audience she was actually talking to. So I think it's really important. You can have a very powerful memoir. What's the one with Cheryl Strayed? Wild? Where
Yes.
she had all kinds of things that had happened to her, but the message was very, very on point. Those other things were just kind of like sub stories that were on part of her journey. So I think that's, to be able to do those other things like marketing, that's what I found is that if you don't have a specific message, if you're trying to reach too many people, then it can be really difficult to be authentic in anything you do, because who are you trying to talk to?
Yeah, and I think it's really important along those lines is, what I typically say to somebody who's very, very new to branding or marketing or having that kind of message. A lot of people think I have to have a tagline. It's helpful, but I also think if the tagline's more, I think, for the book, whereas an author, I think if you can identify those keywords or key phrases that help define who you are, then you're setting expectations for what readers or followers can expect when they come on over to your Twitter stream or your Facebook page or, that kind of thing. And that really helps you. I always say that your keywords, your key phrases are the foundation of everything that you're going to be doing as an author, because that's going to help you decide what your blog schedule topics are going to be about, what articles you're going to share, that you're, because not everything can be about me all the time. So because that's just like a constant, Rachel advertisement.
Right.
So let's share something about the topics that are common bonds between us that we'll both find interesting.
Yeah.
And think about, a lot of people feel like if they can think about one specific reader, then it's easier for them.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting how I think a lot of times people are like, well, I don't know what to say on Twitter. I don't know what to say. But they can talk to their neighbor, or they can talk to, their, whatever, their friend. So, I always say to them, think about yourself. If you're looking for a book on sexual trauma and you're going to type that into Google, what are you looking for? And that's what you want. You want to be the name that comes up. So be consistent in talking about that topic, whether it's your stuff or someone else's that you admire. Be generous. Share great information. And that way it's not about you 24/7.
Yeah. And that also helps, I think, to build connections. I mean, obviously, you're probably not the most famous person who's talking on it may not ever respond, but other people who are more within, and who knows, they might, but what a great opportunity to build connections where they might want to, co-market with you or do a project together or feature you on their blog or things like that. And we take a step back just a little bit for the people who are truly newbies and kind of let them know like what keywords are and what kind of some of that market research is.
Yeah. Well, when I first start with somebody and they have no concept of what a keyword is, I basically, I just did I do a weekly chat that I started. This was part of my marketing actually, called Sex Abuse Chat. I personally love Twitter. I think that it's a wonderful way to connect with other survivors. Some people hate it, and that's fine. Each social media channel kind of lights up different areas of our brain, and they create that very specifically to do that. So keywords are, I always say, like hashtags. If you're kind of surprising, some people are still unfamiliar with hashtags, but it's the number sign and then a word. And so if you use Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, you'll see hashtags everywhere. So think of that number sign and then a word. And then I say, in the chat last night, we talked about finding your purpose, because that can be very difficult for sexual abuse survivors who have had such a hard time just surviving and just going from job to job or home to home, or, the percentage rate of addiction is very high. If you look at addicts, almost 90% of addicts have been sexually abused. It's very sad. So the point is, when you look at finding your purpose, it's almost the exact, I'll send you the chat, but the point is that there were like 11 or 12 questions that you could ask, and they almost all relate to finding your branding, which I thought was really interesting. I shared it over on Bad Redhead Media as well. And the same thing is relates to keywords. So keywords and branding work together. And really what I said before, if you go back to earlier when we first started talking, is if you ask yourself these questions, what are you passionate about? What are you naturally drawn to? So I'll give you an example. My branding for Rachel in the OC, which is the, if you look me up on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, or go to rachelintheoc.com, it's all consistently going to be the same keywords or message that you're going to get without even realizing it.
Right.
Because I was naturally drawn to these topics anyway, are writing and talking about love, loss, sexual abuse, relationships, and anything along those lines, poetry, memoir. And so I share topics, articles on those topics. I write about those topics in my blog. If you look up those keywords in I'll look up those keywords to find articles having to do with those topics, because I don't want it to just be about my memoirs, my poetry. I want to share other people. I'll look up a lot. I share a lot about sexual abuse. I shared an article last night from Salud America. And I tagged people, and they shared it, and it was an actual scan of a child's brain that's normal and a child's brain that's been sexually abused.
Oh my
and
gosh.
The radical difference, and how it can cause permanent brain damage, and how different ways that can manifest in an adult. And I love the way they opened it. When someone tells you to get over it, show them this article. And it was hormone changes and immune system changes. And people, this is my mission, is to help non-survivors and survivors who don't understand what's happening to them, help them understand why they might have chronic pain.
Right.
Or why they, are constantly on edge. PTSD is so common in survivors. So these are the types of things that I share. So those are the basics kind of exercises that I have somebody go through. And I say, start with 5. I had one lady who gave me a list of 100. And I said, this isn't everything that you're interested in the world, because then then there's no focus. We need you to be focused, so that you're managing expectations of your readers and followers. Now, it's okay to have fun too. Like, my backup keywords are my cats, my little one sitting here. He has a cold and he's sneezing. It's so cute. I've never had a cat with a cold.
I don't know that I've ever seen that either.
He's just sneezing constantly. I have a message into my vet, and he's like, it's okay, he'll be fine. That's the cutest thing. So I talk about my cats. I talk about Nutella. People send me pictures from all over the world of Nutella. Now, I don't even really eat that stuff, but once in a while I'll have a little spoonful.
It's so good.
Oh my God. I don't even keep it in the house, but people send me drums, I don't know if you can see big drums from Italy, right? They think of me, which is so wonderful, whenever they see Nutella. I mean, I have hundreds of pictures of people. So you can still have fun with it. It doesn't have to be all serious.
Yeah, that's true. And
Yeah.
I think that there's so much with any writing really, but with topics like this where you really bond, I think with people that are talking about something so, moving and touching, and that you do create that kind of personal like relationship, even though you don't know these people, your
Oh,
followers,
yeah.
like they feel like they know you, and it's that very, very close personal tie. And from a marketing perspective, I mean, I think it's wonderful because then you have these people who they're going to buy all your books when they come out because they know that you're going to touch them in a specific way. That might not be a good phrase to go along with this topic.
Yeah, I know what you meant. It's really fascinating though, because I've had, I mean, some really famous people connect with me either
Right.
through Twitter. Twitter's the great equalizer. I've had conversations with some incredibly famous people, and some of them will DM me and tell me about their abuse.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, people, I would never share names,
No, of
but
course not. You would lose any contact that you have with but no, it's true. I mean, especially I write about child loss and grieving parents, and people and in topics like this that are very, very sensitive, that are very, very painful, that you often feel alone and separated from everyone else. What people are looking for more than anything else is community and people who understand.
absolutely. And they just want to be heard.
Mhm.
There's so many people, especially on Twitter, who will say, could you follow me so I can DM you? And they just want to tell me their story
Yeah.
because they don't want to talk about it publicly, which I completely understand. There's so much shame around this topic, which
Yeah.
I hate
I do
because,
too.
the victims have done absolutely nothing wrong,
Right.
but they just need to talk about it. So that's the other thing is, be prepared when you talk about this, that you potentially can become a magnet for both positive and negative. I get a
Absolutely.
lot of hate.
Yeah, I'm
I get a
sure.
lot of hate.
I'm sure. I have not necessarily received any hate backlash, which is good because, I mean, who would come after a grieving parent? But I would hope not. They're crazy people. But I do, for a little while, I did have to take a step back because, to your point, I became known as the person who had lost a child. So anytime anybody knew anybody who had lost a baby or a pregnancy or 30-year-old child, whatever it was, like they would send me messages, which on the
Oh,
one part, I felt honored that I
yeah.
could be that person. But on the other part, I was like, I can't handle all of this. I gotta, so be prepared for that.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. I do get a lot of people telling me stories. There's no trigger warning. There's just,
Right.
they dump. And sometimes it's, especially on my blog. And yeah, sometimes I just have to hand it over to my guy and say, you need to read the rest of this because I
Mhm.
just can't.
We could probably do an entire different, and maybe this is what we do next year, is self-care for people who become experts in certain areas and fields and things. But one thing that we were talking about before we started recording was your awards. You're up for, I think you just found out you won another one and you're on the short list for another. If you want to tell us about those and then how you can really use awards programs to help you market the books as well.
Sure. I think it's important for any writer to look around for awards contests that are appropriate for your book and make sure that they are the real thing. There's some awards, it's like $5 to enter, and they aren't considered, valid, respected awards, right? This is one that I received. I won the Reader's Favorite Award, first place for narrative nonfiction, and that is considered a valid award.
Mm-hmm.
Some the ones that are like $50 to enter, I think are worth entering your book, and they have a valid panel that reviews your work. It's not like Joe's mom down the street or something.
Right.
So that was really gratifying, and for Broken Places. And then I won a fairly big award. I won first in category for narrative nonfiction from Chanticleer Book Reviews. And so I was really excited about that. And I got my little first place badge. It's hanging on my door. And I was just picked on their site as a top staff pick as well. That just came out, which is really nice.
That's awesome.
And then I just found out that my 30-day book marketing challenge, which we haven't really talked from the business side of it, I have 2 of my personal memoir poetry books out, and I have 2 business books out under my Bad Redhead Media publications. My 30-day book marketing challenge was just shortlisted for their instructional book winners.
Great.
So hundreds of books enter, and I think about 12 are shortlisted.
That's awesome.
So they'll announce the winners in April. So, a shout out to anybody. I don't know when this will be seen, but
March.
Okay, so usually by April is the deadline to submit for most books for last year. So just and I'm going to put together a list. I think people have put together lists already of where to submit your books for, like decent places.
Yeah.
Some awards, Chanticleer's a little pricey. They're about $400, but it includes a review. So that's, it's kind of a good deal. That's about the most I've ever paid for a review. Some are, thousands of dollars. I can't afford that.
Indies can't do that. Well, some indies can. Most of us can't.
Yeah. If it was right now, I wouldn't do it because I have too many other things. Taxes are coming up. So
yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I like book awards as a marketing tool. My book, Ditch the Fear and Just Write It, won for a writing book for the Book Excellence Awards program.
Oh, that's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. I was pretty excited because I'm like, everybody's writing a book about writing these days. I'm sure there's lots of submissions. But one of the things that I was really impressed with when people say like, why would you spend $100, $200 or whatever it is to enter a book awards program? But they've done some great marketing on my behalf. They put together beautiful like promotional booklet for me. They gave me thousands of dollars worth of like training and tools and all these things, like a zip folder of things of how to build yourself as an author. So sometimes you have to kind of take yourself out of the just saying, I can't believe I have to send them copies of my book and they're still charging me, because there's a lot of other things that go into these awards. And if you do win, especially some of the big name awards, if you win some of those, I mean, your life will change as an author.
Yeah. And that's worth mentioning. And I think a lot of writers, don't look at that. They're penny pinching for a reason. And I get that.
Yep.
The one thing that I tell a lot of authors is, number one, these are all tax deductible expenses, right? I mean, this goes towards your business of writing. And that's something that most authors just don't look at. They'll buy their Starbucks coffee and they'll binge their Netflix and pay for all those expenses, but they won't pay for Hootsuite or I use Promo Republic and Buffer now because they're a lot less expensive, because Hootsuite got very, very pricey. But that's a totally other subject. But if you're not willing to invest in yourself, to pay for great editing and a great cover and then submit to something like what you said, and they do that kind of promotion for you, and you can potentially win prize money, and then you get the little sticker to put on your book, and it is award winning and it is a valid award,
right? Or
get a great review from Kirkus or Midwest or one of those places. Those add value to your book, and so it can make a difference.
Absolutely. Okay, so before we wrap up, do you have any other tips that we might not have covered on how people can really, especially with the first book, if you don't have any marketing experience for a book, if you don't know where to start and you're a little bit nervous about putting your book out there, where's the best place to start?
Well, I definitely feel like you need to market and write. It's not a choice. So, start finding your tribe early on. You can go to my site, badredheadmedia.com, and start reading my blog, totally free. I think you have to consider writing as a business as opposed to just wanting to write if you plan on making any kind of money at it. And, Roxane Gay said, keep your day job. She still has her day job. She's made millions in book sales. I have my day job. You have your day job. That's what's going to make you the money. I have 6 books out. I'm going to have 2 more out in the next year. It's not impossible, but it's, one of my clients has 22 books out and just recently was able to quit her job and start living off the royalties. So have realistic expectations about what it takes. It is a job to be a writer. It's not a dream. So work it, make it happen, but do the friggin' work.
Amen, sister. I do see that a lot, actually. People they've written a good book, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, your book can be amazing. Yeah.
You just can't put it out there and then do nothing, because guess what? No sales.
Yeah.
No sales.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming back again. I think this is your 3rd, maybe 4th year in a row, because I think this is my 4th summit, only the 2nd Women in Publishing conference. But I appreciate you continuing to come back and share your incredible knowledge with everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. I love being here with you. It's wonderful. Happy to help.
Thank you.